Although San Francisco does not have the violent reputation that Oakland and Richmond do, certain parts can be just as bad. The worst area is Hunters Point, also known as the Bayview. This section of the city was pretty much empty land until World War II. In 1942, they built shipyards but didn't have enough workers to get the job done, so thousands of African Americans came from Louisiana to work. The city didn't plan on keeping these residents after the war, so they built temporary housing for them. It was only supposed to last a few years. But after the war, these workers wanted to stay in San Francisco instead of going back down to the south. And hey, I don't blame them. So the temporary housing became public housing. At first, it was all one Hunters Point, but now it's divided into sections that have been beefing for decades. Today, I'll be focusing on the two most notorious sections in Hunters Point, Oakdale and West Point. To this day, the original Oakdale projects are still there. Rappers Ice Money and Drew Bees represent the project. On the other hand, West Point was torn down and rebuilt into these luxury apartments. It really went from this to this. In Hunters Point, you affiliate with the project you're from and you don't really get a choice. You don't have to join the street life, but you will be associated with where you grew up. And that is the theme of this tragic story. The harsh reality of growing up in the streets of Hunters Point is beyond imagination. And with that being said, welcome to Swamp Storiez EP.3. We take you back to 2003, the days of flip phones and Jabot jeans. A young man from West Point named Terrell Rollins is working at his game at the Joe Lee Rec Center. Probably working on his three-pointers because that's what he's known for. Coaches call him an absolute gym rat and say that he's one of the best shooters. They say when he gets hot, there's nobody like him. In AAU, he played against first-round draft picks and held his own. He's known by everyone as a great kid except for one incident with his basketball coach at Mission High School. He gets into a fight with his coach and the coach can sense something is wrong beyond basketball. Rollins breaks down to him and tells him that his mom has brain tumors and also that gunshots were fired into his home the night before. The coach forgives him and gives Rollins a hug. Rollins tells his coach that basketball is saving his life. Living in poverty with a dying mother and dealing with non-stop violence makes Terrell see basketball as his only way out. Terrell graduates high school, but his mother gets sicker and sicker and he feels like he can't go off to college and leave her. Also, he finds out that he has a baby boy on the way that he has to take care of. He sadly has to put his basketball dreams away to take care of his family responsibilities. A couple years go by and Terrell Rollins is training to play for City College. He saved up enough money to make sure his son is okay and he feels comfortable enough to chase his own dream. September 19th, 2005. Terrell Rollins is at Joe Lee Rec Center working on his game. Something he does to stay away from the gang wars occurring in his neighborhood. After a long day of working on his game, his friend comes to pick him up. They go to the store to get some Gatorade, and in front of the store he runs into his childhood friend and teammate Archelius Collins. As the two are talking, they hear tires screeching. Their instincts kick in and they start running. One man chases Archelius down with an AK-47, shoots him, stands over him and says, "I told you I would get you," then shoots him dead. At the same time, another man is chasing Terrell Rollins down the street. He looks Terrell dead in the eyes with hesitation, pauses, then shoots Terrell 5 times in the stomach. The men hop back in their car and take off while bystanders rush to help. They accompany Terrell and tell him, "Breathe, T, breathe." The ambulance comes and rushes him to the hospital where he would be for a month. The shooting would put him in a wheelchair and end his basketball dreams. In this shooting, Terrell lost his close friends and his basketball dreams at the same time. He was so devastated by the shooting that instead of getting revenge, he wanted to handle it the right way. When Kamala Harris, who was San Francisco's DA, came by to ask questions, Terrell would give them everything they needed. He told them that Deontay Bennett is the man who shot him. He had played basketball with him. He says, "We caught eyesight. I looked him dead in the eye and he looked me dead in the eye. He didn't want to do it, I could tell, but he did it anyway. He pulled the trigger and shot me in the stomach." He also told them that Daniel Denard was the man who shot his friend to death. A prosecutor said he knew he faced a life or death situation in testifying. Rollins would be put under witness protection by Kamala Harris because they knew that he would be killed if he stayed in the city. 2 weeks after he was shot, his mom passes away from her long battle with cancer. Then, 2 weeks after that, his brother Dante Rollins is shot dead in Sunnydale. All of this while Terrell is isolated in witness protection and recovering from his gunshot wounds. Terrell can't take being away from his family for much longer, so he starts visiting the city more often. He knows the consequences of being labeled a snitch, but he thinks he will be okay. The trial is coming up where he will make his official testimony. So now is actually the worst time for him to be seen, because if he's killed, the shooters may walk free. May 4th, 2006. Terrell takes his car to a repair shop on Bayshore Boulevard. He's with a relative and he assumes that no one would expect him to be there. After Rollins drops off the car and walks outside the shop, a car with 3 men inside pull up and start shooting. Rollins is shot dead on the pavement. Because the key witness is now dead, the DA can no longer prosecute the case. Kamala Harris is upset by this and says it's a shame that a killer walks free. The suspected killer she's talking about is Daniel Denard, and he has a story of his own. About a year before the killing, he had been chased down Jennings Street in the Bayview and was shot multiple times. He had also been arrested 30 times before the incident. Despite this, his family and friends say that he is not a gangster. They call him a victim of law enforcement, saying that police are always falsely accusing him of crimes. One police officer calls him a stone-cold killer and says that Denard and his Oakdale associates are suspected in 12 murders from 2004 to 2006. On the other hand, Denard's lawyer says that Oakdale Mob isn't even a gang. He says there are no gangs in the black community. Denard's aunt says that Oakdale Mob wasn't a gang until SFPD turned them into a gang. I don't know what that means, but she says that Denard is a gentleman. In his last interview, Denard said that he plans to get a construction job and move to Atlanta to start his new life. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Swamp Stories. Leave a like, subscribe, or do whatever you want, but let me know in the comments what you want to see next. I know this video was a little bit different than the ones before, but I'll go back to the Oakland type of video. But without further ado, peace!